Call the meeting to order. And I want to thank both Mr. Captain and Mr. Ingen for filling in while I was absent. Heard before the meeting they both ran the meetings much better than I do, so I'll try to keep up here. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Second. The only discussion I have about the minutes and reading them, I see there was an item that failed 2-2 for lack of majority, and I would suggest we put that back on the agenda today, since it was not resolved either for or against in my absence. The vote split 2-2, so it just ask you what your pleasure is. And that item was the request for proposal for marketing services.
Do you need a motion?
There'd be a motion to add it to the agenda.
I make a motion to add it to the agenda.
First, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
Oh, sure.
Do you want to act on the motion to approve the minutes first?
The minutes
Yeah.
first. All right.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second on the minutes. Call the roll, please.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Cosner.
Aye. All right. Then we could entertain a motion to add that to today's agenda or next. It's the pleasure of the board.
So move.
Second.
So second, a motion and a second to bring that back. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Cosner.
Aye.
So is it on for this meeting, the next meeting, or?
We'll add it at the end of, let's just add this. And after number 10, put it in as 10A. All right. We have in front of us now the vouchers totaling $216,254.48. There one to approve.
Motion. Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Call the roll.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Cosner.
Aye. Next before us is the individual vouchers A through F. Is there a motion to approve the individual vouchers?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Cosner.
Aye. Item number 4 is to receive the financial report for the December 22, the calendar year 22, and January to March 23.
Jamie's online if you have any questions. Please ask this morning.
That's to receive all the information that, are we gonna, go over and discuss any of the items?
We certainly can.
Is that before or after?
No. We could have a motion and a second to approve and then discussion. There are certain ones that we want to spend some time on.
We did go through the 2022 information last year, or earlier this year, on the variances, so if there's any other questions you have.
I move to accept.
A motion to accept all 3 December, calendar year, and February, March. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Now we're ready for discussion.
So I apologize that I have not done the prep work I should have here. But I think for me to kind of get a handle, it might be helpful just to, again, 2022, if you could point out what I didn't see our balance sheet. I'm not quite clear on our cash flow. So if you could just show me just the total income, total expenses, and net for 2022.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and I apologize that we've started the process of creating a dashboard. Give us a quick overall view of the financial performance. And we're kind of waiting for this point where we now have calendar year 2022 in the books and go to 2023. So
the dashboard is just behind the balance sheet, that's the condensed version of everything, Mr. Bird. And you have to understand, there's different accounts, there's the 561 account, which is operations and maintenance, 563, which is our construction and improvement account, 564 is our PFC fund, and 569 is a parking, construction and maintenance fund.
So just on the dashboard at 561, correct? The major operating fund for the airport is 561, but we do a little bit of government fund accounting here just to make things interesting, but I think we should apply the same dashboard to the other accounts there. So if we take a look at this, excuse me, what we have is the 2022 actual, 2022 budget, 2023 budget. So is everybody in the same?
What page are you on?
What page is it?
So that's the Fund 561 budget versus actuals.
It looks like the fourth page in.
Yeah.
Oh, fourth page.
So it looks like there should be another page there though.
Bottom of the next is out, there's still more.
So does it convert to this page?
There, it's only 2 pages.
So like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So then, Mr.
Budget.
Chairman, just so I'm clear, so in 2022, our net income was $14,700,000, or $14,700,000.
Yep.
And we budgeted 10 million. And so, I mean, that's a tremendous year that we have. And then for the 2023 budget, we're budgeting a net income of $4 million.
Correct.
It's because the federal grants that we received through COVID are exhausted.
Sure. So part of that additional money last year was grants.
COVID grants. Yeah, CARES, ARPA, and CARISA.
If you'd like, we can kind of run through here and then Sean can make comments as we work through it. But if you go to the first page of that, and we'll do this by account as we go forward. But you can see in the 22 actual column, and so we've got total income there of 18.2 million, far exceeding the budget of 10 million. So we picked up 8 million in additional revenue in 22.
One thing I want to note there, Mr. Cosgrove, is, and this is new, so when you reviewed December before, the auditors had not completed the GASB 87. There's a line item on there, GASB 87. That's fictitious money. We actually don't receive that money. That's a new accounting standard, and maybe Jamie can help explain that. We actually didn't receive this money. This is what they believe we're going to receive in the future based on the lease agreements
I think
we have.
we can come back to that as we explain each of the items. So you had, 18 million, budget 10, and the budget for 23 is running at 12 million. So Rick, that big difference that you see starts to show up at the top line in the revenues, and in addition to the GASB money, the intergovernmental revenue is we pick up most of that. We also see a big jump in rental fees, over budget 8.7 million versus 4.6, and then budgeting that. So, Sean, if you want, intergovernmental revenue, we see the jump there. Those are grants. When we drop down, what do you think was impacting the rental fees?
Well, as we talked before, I mean, we've gone through this before, the biggest thing was when the 2022 budget was put together, we were in the midst of COVID, so we budgeted the absolute minimum for car rental, which was $70,000 per year. That's our annual guarantee. And of course, we recovered quicker from COVID than what we knew back in May of 2021, June 2021, when the 2022 budget was put together. So the biggest ones are parking and car rental. Those are your largest outliers in terms of increased revenue, which makes up that 8.6 million.
Then the other, major deviation is the lease revenue, the gas fee, and how that's recognized. Well, Jamie, if you wanna take us to accounting school?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, just one moment.
I think it would be good as well to have 19, 20, and 21, so we see the impact of COVID in the revenue stream and then the pendulum swinging the other way too. Because it looks extreme, although I don't think it is extreme if you've
Yeah, and
seen
this
that over
is-
5 years.
We
Yeah.
certainly can adjust this, because remember, we started this to try and pull together a dashboard that we can kind of look at. So there's additional information to add to it, so we can.
So, Mr. Chairman, just, so really this, for Fund 561, there were two major things that happened. The intergovernmental revenue was about 2 million higher, and the rental fees were about 4 million higher.
Yeah, so then we start seeing the deviations, we work down through it.
And you'll see that in the detail, Mr. Burt, and the individual accounts that are behind the dashboard. You'll see the car rental and parking, those are
Okay, thanks.
And Jamie, the Gatsby, not Gatsby, Gatsby.
Yeah, Kathy. I'm not sure I'm the best one to explain this because this is definitely not an area of my expertise, which is why the auditors did this. But what it's doing is it's taking your leases that you have locked in. So they did an analysis. I think Sean and Joan gave them all the leases that they have. And what this standard does is it looks at, I believe, like the fair market value of the lease, and they book that as a receivable and or as a liability. So when you look at the balance sheet as well, you're gonna also see some GASB 87 activity. So in the past, if you have a lease, which you therefore have a lot of them, you don't ever see that reflected anywhere to see what do people owe us over time or what's due to us. It just shows up as rental income, not as anyone owes us. There's no AR or anything related to that. This whole standard is surrounded by putting that on the books, having that accounts receivable on the book. And then I'm not sure if there's any liability associated with this one. I don't think there is. So, oh yeah, yes there is. You'll see that too. There's a liability related to it as well. Again, I'm not sure I'm the best one to explain it, but that's the idea behind it, is moving those leases through the balance sheet so they're recognizable.
Yeah, if you look at the liabilities on the balance sheet, I mean, there's a 7.2 million outflow, deferred inflow noted, okay? There's even interest, short-term lease receivables and then interest receivables for GASB 87, so. I don't know, this year now for 2023, we have to account for, like, we lease a copy machine or any other equipment that we lease, we have to put that on the books. That's a new standard for this year.
And thank you, Sean. So the way I kind of sometimes work through these is start with the totals. So we see 8 million in income over budget for 22, and now if we drop down into the expenses. And again, this may be easier if we just use totals. We've got some sub-accounts here. If we start with the first expense item of salaries, then we split that out, airport, fire, police. Perhaps we can just use the totals to begin with. We always have the detail back that we can look at, but so when we look at salaries, we're about 2.7 million in salaries, 2.6 million in budget, kind of online there. Benefits, we're a little under other services, a little bit higher for other services. What would fall into other services? Accounting, those type of things, Sean?
Detail. Other services. That's other services, yeah. Engineering, architecture, planning, accounting, legal services, yes. Security, parking management, warranty.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Sean, does that include pre-planning for any construction projects? Is it in there?
This is
Until it's,
561 account, so that would be a 563 account if there were.
This is
This is just operations and maintenance.
operations. We're picking up some additional there, but it seems that in the 23 budget, we're starting to account for that. I don't know if there's any that somebody wants to discuss as we go through that.
So the dashboard is backed up by the pages that follow. So if you see the summation, the totals or whatever, that's what's been reduced down into the dashboard on 561, the pages that follow. So you can see the clear detail.
Yeah, and here's another wonderful accounting blip at the very bottom of the page. Asset reclassification. Who wants to talk about what we're doing there?
Yeah, she explained that before in terms of those are projects that have been paid. So like the exit plaza, the East Economy lot, any project that we conveyed and then they put it into a fixed asset form. Is that correct, Jamie? They just
Yeah, it is. So, as you guys are paying bills throughout the year, those get coded to the individual expense account based on what that is, whether it's engineering, planning, equipment, whatever it might be. So at the end of the year, we take a look at what projects are completed, what projects are still in construction, and we do one journal entry to move those from the P&L to the balance sheet. And it's how it's been done for as long as I look back at the financials, so we continue doing it the same. The auditors wanted us to do it that way as well, because then we keep that classification of where was the money spent. We're not going into each individual account to say, oh, we spent money on engineering, architecture, whatever else it is, and moving it out of each individual account. We just pull it out of that account to say, okay, we capitalized $8 million worth of fixed assets this year.
So, Rick, as you pointed out, we did end up in the year with 14.8 million in net income, budget of 10.5, and that moves across then to the balance sheet, Jamie, and how does that fit back into the balance sheet?
That would go in as, if projects were done, it would get added to fixed assets. If not, they just get added to construction and process. And then throughout 2023, as those projects are completed.
Yeah, I think I confused you there. I moved on from the reclassification of the assets, because the net income for the year at 12.2 million, or excuse me, right over here. And what I was talking about is how does that then move over into the balance sheet?
If you look at page 3 of the balance sheet, you'll see that 12.2 million right at the bottom.
Okay. So the third page of the balance sheet, you start to see the effect of 561 has probably the biggest individual effect on our balance sheet. And so the net income comes across there and is then spread out between cash and other assets on the balance sheet. And those funds then are available also for other projects within the airport, correct?
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So just to follow that transition, so the 14,764,000. I don't see where, you show the net income for the year of 12,200 or 12,200,000. Why was that not 14,700?
Great question. It's because the one report that you're looking at where you're pulling that 14 million is only showing the 561 fund.
Okay,
So you would need to add 563,
sure.
564, and 569 all to that. That would net to the 12.
Okay, so the balance sheet includes all the funds.
Yes, yep, all inclusive, yep.
Then do you have a year-end 2021 balance sheet in this packet?
I don't think there's one in this packet, but we do have it.
That might be helpful for our next meeting, just to, again, see where we're going from a balance sheet standpoint.
Yeah, we have those, we sent those to you yesterday, so we can go back to 19, 20, 21 and put that together for you.
Well, I'm most interested in 1941.
Yeah.
We have it. I know exactly where it's at.
Yeah, no, that'd be fine, that'd be fine.
Let's go back to when they're handwritten.
I've got that too.
Yeah. The one thing though is that if we are tracking, and this is something I think the board needs to be looking at, we do go back to, we basically had 8 million in additional revenue. But there were additional expenses over budget during that time period. So we aren't seeing the total effect of that, but we are seeing some changes there. So, but from our standpoint as a policy board, it's just as important for us to understand why we're over budget as why we're, under budget. And that we understand that COVID is gonna be this blip in all financial statements for a number of years as we look at that. So we can bring back a 21 balance sheet. Any other things you'd like to see on this?
I think it would be easier to read if we didn't have the cents. If you stopped at the dollar mark.
Okay, so we can shorten those up.
If that's possible in QuickBooks or not.
I think it is. You just round it. It'd be a rounding.
We do that,
Just round it, can't you?
yeah.
Okay. The other thing, do you want to take a look at this just with the total columns instead of those sub-columns in there? It would shorten it up to about a paragraph. Because we always have the backup full information on every account, but we could just,
And that's because some want all the backup information, so.
well, yeah, no, we would have the backup information, but the dashboard is again to help us take a look and see what is happening.
To more quickly pinpoint if you've got questions, and then we can
Then-
always go back further.
Go
Sure,
back further. So,
I'd be okay with that.
Jamie, is that something that you could redo for us without a lot of pain and suffering?
I think so. When you said shorten it to a paragraph, so if we're looking at that 561, what we're kind of calling the dashboard right now.
Yep.
Under the expenses, do you want that to just be 493.11 salaries, all of that just one line? Or do you want to see it just how it is here?
No, I think if we start taking the sub-accounts, so we just do the 493.11 salaries, then we do 493.2 employee benefits. If
Okay.
there's large differentials in there, we can then back up and say, where's it coming from in salaries? Is it, airport, fire, police, or is it across the board? But if we're tracking very close on our salaries, then we need to fit that deep into it.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Sean, with respect to salaries, what portion of salaries are reimbursable and broken out, the firefighter, what portion is that of reimbursable?
Well, anything that's in 7,005 or 7,007 is reimbursed fully, with a little bit of exception with the fire department when they do airfield snow removal, they don't do that. So there is a significant portion of that, whatever the police department charges us in ARC, it's probably $1 million plus, a little over $1 million. $1.2 million salaries that are reimbursed by the airlines.
So some of that, the portions that have reimbursements, I do like that it's broken out because it's not just attributed to an expense, it's an expense that's reimbursable. So those I would like to see, and I don't have a problem with the detail. It takes a little more work to go through it, but I don't have a problem with the detail. I understand if we get one page and we can shorten it, that's great for a conversation, but then we're digging anyway. If we have questions, I'd sooner have it as we're digging into it to not have to wait another meeting to get that information back.
Yeah, I think the dashboard would just sit on top of full detail. And then it just becomes how comfortable we are flipping back and forth.
So is the proposal then to have a dashboard, but then behind it have all the detailed supporting information as well?
That's what we've
I
always
think
had.
so.
Okay, all right. That would be fine.
Jamie, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Is there any way to put page numbers on this? Cause I mean, it's a lot of information and, looking for, things that notations or highlight, and there's like 100 pages. So it maybe help everybody if we could reference back and forth more quickly or efficiently if we had page numbers.
QuickBooks does that, but we don't have to manually.
We can put them on, I guess, by statement. I just think if we can just number all of them, they're not all. Yeah, we could, it'd just be a manual process, but yeah, we can add those to the monthly financials.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
A question, when we make the packet, can Adobe take all of that information to just add a page number at the bottom of it for the packet, the combined PDF file? That might be it more efficient as it's being
Yeah,
put
I just
together.
think some sort of reference number, I'm not sure. Certainly not an Adobe expert.
I think it would just help us all to be on the same page.
Well, let me see if I can summarize where we are here. Jamie, as far as the balance sheet goes, we'll add a 2021 column in the balance sheet. I think that will all fit on the existing balance sheet, correct?
Yep, I can do that.
Okay. And then as we look at 561, we'll move that, so we'll just pick up the total accounts. And again, we kind of look at that, see where it is, and Rick, there's things we want to add, and we certainly can. Doesn't mean we have to take out all sub-accounts and maybe certain sub-accounts.
Well, Mr. Chair, if it's in the detail along with what we get for the
Yeah.
meetings, that's fine,
Okay.
that we can reference it.
So, and, do we want to look at 2021 actual then as part of that dashboard, or going back to 22 actual, 22 budget, 23 budget?
I think because COVID just messed everything up so badly, it would help us establish a pattern.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, not to throw a monkey wrench in everything, but, kind of what I would, from my personal perspective, I'd like to spend time on our 2023 budget and forecast. And then for me, when we meet, all I really want to know is, are we on track or off track? I don't really need to go in, if we want to, I want the detail there, I know we can get that, but I really, from my perspective, I trust, obviously our staff is on top of that stuff, they know, And just to make sure that we're plugged in on what that budget is. And so whatever our net profit in is at the end of the year, as a board, that's what we're expecting. And if something happens, which always changes, then I think we should address that and, you know, how we're gonna fix that, what are we gonna do, we agree on that, and then we're not kind of spending a lot of time as a board on each monthly financial statement, unless there's an issue that we need to address.
But, and I guess I might have jumped over that. The thought process I've had is once we've got this format, this dashboard now, that we would then, and we've been waiting to do this to get the audit out of the way, but we would do a monthly comparison.
Sure. So we're on top of.
We're on top there, but we're gonna look at monthly income and expenses versus budget. And I heartily support what you're saying there.
Mr. Chairman, one other question.
Yeah.
Jamie, I apologize. Could you explain what your role is with the airport authority and your firms? Just for my
Yeah.
benefit.
Yeah, so a lot of the day-to-day, entering bills, paying bills, receiving deposits is handled by Joan and Sean at the airport, but we go in on a monthly basis and we're reconciling cash, reconciling credit cards, basically reconciling the balance sheet, and putting together the financial statements as well. So, yeah, basically doing that balance sheet reconciliation, reconciling some individual accounts on the balance sheet as well. But a lot of the day-to-day is handled at the airport.
Okay, thank you.
Your package
Yeah.
yesterday that we emailed you per your request is a 5-year history of revenues, so we can get that to all the board members. That comes off of the city system that we transitioned, so
Well, that's
there's
pretty
5
easy to
years of
understand.
data that you're looking for. I don't know how much paper you want, but you'll get it all. So we don't have the ability to do a dashboard.
It's out on that old computer paper.
And it's down to the PDF by line. So you do have the 5-year history. Joan will forward that email to all of you, and hopefully that'll answer your questions on the trends.
All right, Jamie, are you understanding what we're looking for going forward here now?
I think so. Let me just recap. We want the balance sheet to show the 2021 actuals. We want page numbers, which I'll coordinate with Joan if she's gonna do that in the full packet, or if I need to do that individually. On that dashboard for 561, we just need the total, not the breakdown between 7004, 5 and 6, 5 and 7. And then round everything so we don't have any cents in the financials.
And then the last thing that we'd like to do in the dashboard is to break it out, look at it monthly. Once we've been kind of waiting to get this format down, but that we would then each month be able to look and see the results, month, actual month, budget, and then year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget.
So kind of, let's see, so are you thinking,
You can do that on the dashboard.
so on the dashboard, next month, you would see April, actual April budget, year-to-date, actual year-to-date budget?
Yeah, if we could go back and start with January, so we'll track that each month, each year. And we haven't done that, we wanted, you'd have the time to get audit and everything done, but if we could go January actual, January budget, and then year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget.
Okay, and along with 2023 on there?
Yep.
2023 budget?
That's gonna give us a quick snapshot, as Mr. Berg has pointed out, that help us start to identify things that are trending above, below, or off, and start understanding, in sort of real time, month by month, what may be causing it. And then I know there'll be some learning curves here, there'll be certain items that are just timing and cutoff issues that make things kind of look goofy for 1 month, but they straighten out. I think as we go through this, we'll start to understand and see those moving forward.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So, on number 4, we do have a motion and a second to approve, and with the items that we've discussed and added to it. Call the roll.
Haggett.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Aye.
Osborne.
Aye. All right. Item number 5 is to renewal of the listing agreement with Cityscapes. We have a motion there.
Motion.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this at this point?
Just what, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
What is the status there? What do we have for vacancy? How's it going? Is there any? Oh,
Stand on
Board
the
members?
star there.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
well, just kind of how's it, it's for the old terminal, the east terminal, right? Just
Correct.
How's it going there long term, or what do we have? We have big
We've been
space available?
Pretty much, most of the time. We had one tenant that moved out at the end of last year. We were kind of waiting because the FAA had said that they wanted it. And we kept playing the wait game with the federal government on that. And we finally got to a point, and they told us, we just can't, give you guys an answer.
Sure.
So move on. So I asked Sean if we should just open it up to a general public listing then, so then I went ahead and listed it on the commercial ML.
Good, good,
So-
yeah. Yeah, no, I was, actually, I saw the tenant mix over there and I was kind of impressed that it was as full as it was. But do we have like a long-term strategic plan with that old terminal?
Keep it full.
Okay, so just keep renting it out.
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago, we put new windows in. Trying to think of what
Sure.
other improvements we've done.
Some
here.
roof, we replaced the roof a number of years ago, and that's still, I think, doing fine, Dan, for now. The HVAC system, the boiler and stuff to keep up, so it's a boiler system. And individual offices do have air conditioning,
Right.
we maintain all that. So
Okay, thank you.
Rick's been doing a fabulous job. So
But we don't have sort of a 5, 10,
I've got one.
20-year plan for that building.
Somewhere.
Keep
this
it
is
going up.
additional non-aeronautical revenue for us, so. It works well for them.
I think you'll see on the listing agreement, there's something we've had on there for, I think ever since I've been here, that if there is a aviated or aviation-related tenant, they have a first right of refusal then to have space in the building versus someone that's not aeronautical related.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is more for Stacy. Have the leases for those spaces had the inclusion for the cryptocurrency mining and exemption?
They have, we've gradually been getting them
Okay,
signed,
as they
and with John
okay.
having, either the lease renews and I add it, or we've just added it, so
Okay.
that's, John's arm is gonna be tired by the time he leaves today.
We've had that rate probably last 2 years, Stacy?
So let me just,
Anybody in the last 2 years?
so just so I'm clear, so we would have the ability to kick the tenants out if an aviation use came in?
Yes.
It's in the lease.
It's in the
At the
lease.
end of the lease.
At the end of the lease.
Yeah, it's required by the FAA, so.
Right,
it's
but we
part of the
couldn't
lease.
do it during their lease.
60 days.
I think there's 60 days.
It's 60 days.
I'm just saying it might make sense for us to, not that we've got someone, but if we had a big user that came in, I mean, that'd be an ideal to have a big user come and take the whole thing, we're dealing with one tenant. But it's almost impossible to coordinate with a big user if we've got a bunch of leases that are 5-year, 2-year, 6-year kind of thing. So I guess for my purpose, I certainly support us getting on the market and doing that, but it would be helpful for me to know how our leases relate to what we just talked about. And
You'd like to see a schedule kind of
Right, my question would be, could we cancel all the leases in 60 days or, 120 days?
One thing that's unique about the building, most of the leases are short-term, they're usually a year to
Right.
maybe two. So they're renewed like on an annual basis. So if you wanted to change, anything in the verbiage of the lease or do something, you could do it fairly quickly in, commercial real estate.
Sure, and maybe that's the question, is just what are the terms on, what is the lease term on those leases that are there?
It
Normally,
depends,
Basically,
1 to
you
3,
do
the
it.
FA is 5.
Yeah, I would like to see
Just a
that
quick
breakdown on those. Again, I don't know, I've had situations in my experience where I've had a 500 square foot tenant with a 5-year lease and other tenants that couldn't expand because they were right where they needed to be. And so I'm just thinking long term. I mean, I love the old terminal, beautiful terminal, but people basically are either aviation related or they're there because it's really cheap rent, right? And so from our standpoint as landlords, it's kind of like, how do we maximize the rent we're getting out of our assets? And again, I don't have an idea or a solution there, but who knows if there's another big carrier or someone that wants to come in and do something, that might be a lot more, we could probably charge a lot more in rent. And I don't know if most of those tenants would be terribly upset other than the fact that they'd have to pay more rent somewhere else. So my concern is I want to know that we've got flexibility to do that. So if we have it.
I think a good example of that would be when UPS came in a couple of years ago. We actually worked it out where they leased the conference room as a training room.
Sure.
And so in non-usable space, if you will, on a regular basis as a tenant goes, but we were able to maximize that for UPS during that time until their new facility was complete up on the north end.
Okay, so anyway, my request would be, let's just get a list of those tenants and when their leases expire.
Rick, is that something that Stacy could?
I've got it right on my Excel spreadsheet.
All right, yeah,
5 minutes.
all right, then we'll share that, all right. Roll call please, on the motion.
Hingham.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Navitand.
Aye.
Crosby.
All right, and item number 6 is authorizing attendance at the Alabama Fire College. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second, discussion, call the roll.
Hingham.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Navitand.
Aye.
Aye.
Crosby.
Aye. Item number 7 is the de-icing conference in July. I think we just spend that item.
In Dallas.
Shouldn't the de-icing conference be in January? It's something that's vital to us here, so.
We're going to January.
Yeah.
We're all busy in the middle of winter.
Everybody's at de-icing, so.
The de-icing conference in July.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Hingham. Berg.
Aye.
Navitand.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Crosby.
Aye. Item number 8 is, there's a renewal of a lease in the East Side Terminal Office for the Beach Auxiliary. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Hingham.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Navitand.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Crosby.
Aye. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Strand.
Thank you for bearing with my tardiness.
No, good to see you as always.
You
We're
gotta
on
bring
item
breakfast
number
next
9 in the agenda, as we're trying to work through this. We have a recommendation for the CMAR, part of the terminal expansion. And Rick or Sean, I don't know which one of you wants to.
Actually, Brandon Halverson is on
Okay.
from Eden Hunt, and we're just part of the selection committee, so.
All right,
Hey, good morning, everybody. So We are at the tail end of the procuring the construction manager at risk for the terminal addition. We received proposals on April 21st, and then we had interviews with the two leading candidates last week. Those two candidates were McGuff, teamed up with TF Powers, and then PCL Construction. Both were very capable companies, and they submitted very thorough proposals and had exceptional teams that executed great interviews. So all went well, but in the end, the selection committee scores were tallied, and McGuff and TF Powers came out on top by a margin of 11. That's out of a total score of 200. So it was close. So we would we're asking the board to move forward with, if the airport can move forward with negotiations with the top candidate, McGuff and TF Powers.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to accept the recommendation of the body and move forward for negotiation.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion now. Is there any discussion in the process?
Yeah, I'd like to hear your take on that process and.
It was very thorough, both candidates, their overall bid and the estimates were very close, both very professional, great depth in either of them and good experience. So either way, it was would have been a good choice.
You stated negotiation with them at this point. What are we now negotiating?
Well, moving forward,
The
they'll.
actual contract and the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So they've submitted a proposal. Our RFP had contract terms set. What we felt were frankly in the best interest of the airport, and the construction managers have their ideas of what they would like those terms to be. We asked for those in the RFP, and they provided them. They're just minor logistics, short list of I think they had 4 or 5 things that they wanted to discuss. So we'll go through those terms, work through them. There's nothing. I don't see anything that would be deal breakers at all. They're pretty minor, and McGuffin said the same thing. So we'll work through those. We'll also work through and make sure that their proposal percentage cost fees are also aligned with our expectations.
Mr. Berg.
Well, I guess my question is, what are we accepting? They did the RFP, what are the top 3 things in the RFP that cost again, I'm not sure exactly, I haven't had a chance to look at the RFP, but I'm assuming that they laid out what their charges are, what their expenses are, what our obligation would be. And then I think second of all, I understand you're gonna negotiate the details, but what are the main key points? Really, simply put, we can break it down into scope, schedule, and budget. So the scope is pretty clear. What we want them to cover. It's going to be, it's going to be they have pre-construction services. They're going to be providing estimating and schedule guidance for phasing, and then that's for the pre-construction phase. And then for the once you get into construction, it's going to be procuring 3 bids
for each of the major trades, procuring the bids, making sure that it aligns with all the FAA requirements and state requirements. So we're in line to get procure funding, and then executing construction. This first push, so in negotiating the contract, we will establish what's called an initial guaranteed maximum price, which will align with our budget. Their RFP laid out exactly how they're going to hit that target. So it's called the IGMP, initial guarantee maximum price. So that's what our contract will be based on. And then once we go through the design process, we have milestones where we'll check to make sure that we're on target still. And then once the bids come in for construction, they will then we'll amend the contract for a final GMP, and that's where we'll execute construction and phasing.
Mr. Chairman, what's our cost? What are we agreeing to pay them for the construction management? I guess that was my question.
This initial contract is only going to be for pre-construction services, and they had, let me see, I can pull this up here.
Hey, Brandon?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Terry. I'm kind of wondering maybe if you need to explain the CMAR process to Commissioner Rick. So I think that might be the issue. Rick, do you understand what the CMAR thing is?
Well, I mean, not totally, but we're hiring a construction manager to be kind of organized, pull the bids together, correct?
Yeah.
And so I'm fully comfortable with that. I think that's a good decision. My question just was, how are we? I mean, we're agreeing to this. So are we just agreeing to this contract for pre-construction development, or are we agreeing to this all the way through? So
yeah, that's a great question. So no, the answer is we're agreeing to. Right now, we're just asking to negotiate, then we'll come back around for finalizing the contract. What the contract will agree to is hiring the construction manager for pre-construction services, which I described and what they'll be doing. And then at the time bids are procured, we will amend the contract to hire them on for the construction piece of it.
So the intent is we would carry through with the same group through the whole project. And then my only,
yes.
Yeah, then I'm fine with that. My only question then is, what are we paying them?
Yeah, for the fourth time.
Yeah.
What's the cost?
Yeah. Right now, and that number could adjust as part of the negotiation piece. Let me pick that up here and see what.
Maybe let me short circuit this a little bit.
Sure.
So, this motion is to say, we've selected this group, and now we're gonna enter negotiations on pre-construction services to include the price or cost of that service. Is that
For phase one of it.
for phase
Yes.
one?
Yeah, it just seems to me that you'd get the price before you approve the group.
Absolutely.
Well,
I'm new at this.
actually, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, both candidates that submitted proposals had their estimates in those proposals, and they were so close that there was a great comfort level that either one would have been in line. So that was the first stage, or the filter.
Yeah, but I understand we still need to know what we're spending.
And I'm totally fine with that, I guess I just, what is that?
So right now, McGuff is proposing their pre-construction cost not to exceed, I can share this with you too, so you can see it.
And Brandon, you have the last estimate from the consultant that you're using for project.
Yeah. So McGuff had 311, right now they're proposing 311,000 for pre-construction services. Let's see here.
Mr. Chair, there is a representative of McGuff here, if he can expand. I hate to throw him in the fire, but.
Go ahead.
Let's go ahead and keep going. Okay.
Okay. I don't know, Darren, can I share my screen here?
And try.
There we go.
The other
Thanks.
thing we should address is who's gonna
Okay.
do the negotiation? Do you need a subset of the board to work on that, or?
So I would foresee that, moving forward with, Sean, Cumming Group, myself. We can bring it back to the selection committee if the board would like, just to assure that everyone's okay with it. But getting into the details and the expectations of the construction manager and the pre-construction process, I feel like Danny with Cumming Group and myself would probably be the best ones to understand that and have the best interests of the airports negotiating that. Can everyone see my screen here?
We can
This is a
see your
breakdown
screen,
of-
we can't read it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I think it's a
Okay.
breakdown by hours on what they're
Yeah.
anticipating the time to do all this, so, I mean,
Right.
that answers my question.
Okay,
I
so,
didn't mean to get into the
No,
minutia.
I think it's good discussion. So the negotiating committee, do you wanna include that as part of the, motion would, the selection committee would continue, so Mr. Engen would continue to work on this, and I think you're the most familiar with the whole thing going forward.
I think there could be two of us. Mr. Berg has construction experience, substantial experience.
I'll just create problems.
That's okay.
I would, if it's appropriate, I would move that, the two Ricks
Let's see.
be the negotiating committee.
Let's go back and remove the first motion. If you want to withdraw your first motion, Rick.
Well, I think we can do that motion and then just create the committee after fact.
Yeah,
That's
do that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do whatever. My only question is this a job for board members, or is this something we should, that Sean and his staff should really be negotiating on our behalf?
Well, then,
I think
yeah,
they should.
I think so too, and then if they need some backup,
Yep.
we do that, but I don't wanna undermine their authority.
no, I'm not sure. I mean, this is our first time with the CMAR.
What's that?
process.
Same board members.
But this is our first foray into the CMAR process, so we may do it a little chunky and herky-jerky as we go, but hopefully we'll get it right. So,
So the purposes of, the motion is to accept Macau as the construction manager. That's the motion, right? And it's been made and seconded. Okay.
okay, call the roll.
Hingham,
Aye.
Berg,
Aye.
Capitan,
Aye.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye. Now, would we like to appoint the,
I would move that Richard Engen and Rick Berg be appointed as the, commissioners to work with the staff on making sure that everything is done appropriately, I guess.
All right. Negotiate the terms of the
Swimmingly.
contract. All right.
Well, so I think that's good and I appreciate it. I do think it's important maybe for us to kind of sort through and figure out what our role is, what our role isn't, so we're getting the full board what they need, but not overwhelming people with a lot of the detail too. So maybe that's what we can do is discuss that going forward.
Well, and we do have from the proposals, we have the outline of basic outline, so there'll be that daunting material deviation from it.
Mr. Chair, I think Brandon probably can explain that he will be involved, they will be involved in Cummings Group moving forward. For updates, ultimately it can come from them. Sean, is that correct?
Correct, that's what we just approved.
Rick, is that they will feed us the information? Yeah, okay.
That's their role.
All right. Call the roll, please.
And then
I should
I didn't
abstain.
have a second. Is there a second?
Can't abstain.
Second,
We can vote against it.
I have to abstain, I'm one of the two, so
What's that?
I have to abstain, I'm one of the
All right, call the roll.
Hang on.
Mr. Regan.
two. I have to abstain.
Well, I'll abstain then too.
Capitan.
Yes.
Cosgrove.
Well, you've been volunteered, appointed. Yes. All right.
I don't think there's a conflict of interest if you're taking on more work.
No.
Pay
Do we
is-
get paid
The
for
pay
this?
is incredible.
Double pay?
Actually, you're
More
required by
than-
statute.
All right. All right, number 10, item 10 is
Unless you have a
the,
conflict.
yeah.
I don't
Continuing
think
the
that's a
discussion
conflict.
of the Walker Consulting
Should
Report,
have voted no.
yeah, referring to the parking garage study for the airport. And I believe at last meeting you received the report on the parking garage and there's some estimates of costs and locations and so. I think we've reached the point with this that we have to, as a board, decide, is this something we're going to pursue? Or put the study on the shelf and wait for the next opportunity. If we are going to pursue this, we do have some time constraints. The biggest constraint, and this moves us into some suppositions, but if part of the process in the parking garage study were to be a request from the city for participation in the funding, and that involves the city looking at, we're supposing a lot of things here. The city were to look at a mill levy dedicated for debt service on the parking garage. We would have to bring that forth to the city by approximately, Commissioner, I believe, end of May, because the city has to certify to the county a maximum mill levy that could be requested for the year. So that's kind of where we are with the process. And I think if we want to keep options open at this point, and with some preliminary discussions and targeted times when this could be accomplished, but the biggest thing is that if we are going to ask the city for participation, I think it would only be fair to give them the time to have the option. They of course have the option to decline, they have the option to look to participate in a number of ways, but one option that they would have is a dedicated mill beyond the two mills that are currently allocated to the airport. So that's where we are. We need to make some decisions going forward. First of all, were there any questions or concerns with the study? And I know we can sort of start second guessing that whole process. But the idea was to use the study to develop an order of magnitude, to say, here's cost range, here's what it looks like, and we now have to pursue that, and it's going to be subject to a variety of things. So, I think we know it can be constructed, we know it will generate revenue, we know it will have some ability to cash flow, and how do we work that into our financial plan. The other item that I think is important to consider in all this is we're gonna be entering into a process that basically doubles the size of the terminal. I think we'd be a little bit remiss in not trying to figure out what that does with our parking. We've got some limited small expansions still available to us in long-term parking. But I think the Walker report points out to continue to move south. You know, if we're gonna move south, we should move about, 1,000 miles south with the parking to get back to warm weather. But if we continue moving south, then we're gonna have to figure out some way to transport people other than pulling a roller bag through the snow to get there. That's where we are. That's just my little summation, some sprinkles of opinions, and welcome a discussion with the board here.
Mr. Chair, the Walker study, along with the prior studies, dealt with the cost. I don't think it dealt with the size accurately. I think this study was short by one floor. I would think if we're gonna build a facility, a starting point or a stepping stone, we make the facility a proper size to begin with. And then if it continues and it prospers the way we think, it can be mirrored and grow adjacent to that facility. So number one, the study was short on size. It should have have 4 floors. Location was blocking everything. My first thought was it should have been on the west side, giving the privilege of a wind block basically for the east side at this point in time, because the northwest wind seems to be a predominant wind. And the mill levy, I think in any modeling, that mill levy is important. It shows a commitment from the city that they want to participate, and the taxpayers of the community want to participate. So having said that, I would move we continue the process forward with the understanding the size needs to be dealt with. I think it needs to be larger. The mill levy needs to be brought forward to the city sooner than later, and we have to look at all funding sources.
We have a second, we can have discussion.
I'll second.
Second motion. Yes, the discussion, and again, I would caution that the Walker study was a pre-designed study.
Yeah.
It was not intended to be a working drawing. There were suggestions made in the Walker study. But if we are going to proceed with this, we are going to have to engage architectural services where, Mr. Ingram, we would get down and dirty with all those items. And I agree that the study was, I believe, 3 stories with 700 parking slots.
Net of 5.
Yeah, and there's the opportunity each story that you go up gets lower per cost per spot, and so the 700 to close to 1,000 might make sense. It's anticipated as a covered garage, which creates a catch-22 is that for snow load, the roof of the garage can support parking cars on. But you do want a covered facility, so I think those items would all move forward. That we would need to understand as a board that we're committing to this. I think it would be imperative if we're going to do this, and with the timing of the terminal, it may be possible on an accelerated basis, and assuming things go very well, to actually start construction next spring. That could be April. And again, huge number of assumptions. Precast construction might allow the parking garage, if it all works out, to be open for business in the late fall of 2024.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that concerns me. We have a major project coming right now, and the displacement of employee parking for passengers would be a concern. That timeline seems a great concern, and actually I would ask our construction manager, at-risk representative, to the extent it concerns them.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think for me, we're missing the fundamental first step in this whole thing. And I've spent a little bit of time here trying to get a handle. And the first thing we gotta do, I mean, quite frankly, we're landlords. It's gotta make money and it's gotta serve our customers, right? And so I think for me, that's the piece that's missing here. I would get all these surveys and these things and this, that, and one has 50,000 installed, another has 30,000. I mean, we've built a lot of parking garages in Fargo. I mean, we can get those numbers, but I think the reason I supported this was for the discussion, but I think the very first thing we need to do is show us a pro forma. So if we build, and if we build it for 40,000 a stall, and we charge this much rent, does it pay for itself? Because I don't think we can go to the city and say, hey, we can build this and it pays for itself, and we just want you to sweeten the pot. So until we know where we're at, it's hard to go to the city. If we go to the city and say we're $500,000 short a year to do this, then I think that makes a case for the city to help figure a solution. I think the other piece is how do we finance it? You know, if we're paying 8.5%, that creates one issue. If there's opportunities that we can leverage some other money, or there's some pots like the Bank of North Dakota, if this would be something that would work, that changes all the dynamics. And so I guess from my personal perspective, I think what needs to be done ASAP is a pro forma, and just maybe it's a back of a napkin. And I think Walker is an outstanding company. I mean, they're big and they do a lot of that stuff. I mean, maybe we ask them to give us you know, when it's completed, what's a 5 and 10 year pro forma look like on it?
You know, I think you got a good point. We might have, I'm not sure Walker, I'm not trying to disqualify Walker. Sean, who did we use in the financial projections and modeling for the terminal?
It's Lieberwitz and Portland, and they're of course very interested in, if you go forward, they're trying to find money for the terminal, let alone for this, so they would be probably the most up to speed on our financial situation, because they've been inputting all the data right through this process now of picking the CMARs, so Lieberwitz and Portland could be an option. SP Plus is gonna do it regardless of whether or not you ask them to. That's what they do for a living, they're gonna do a pro forma. That's underway as we speak. They won't charge us anything for that. And then, of course, you have Walker. So those are the three.
Mr. Chair. Sean, I think we do have the spreadsheets from a year and a half ago when this was reviewed prior, don't we? And the city has those as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, this is not complicated. I mean, I think we could have a local, you know, accounting firm do it as well. But we need really three things. One is we know what it costs to build, and we kind of have a feel for those numbers. Two, we need to know what kind of income we'll receive on an annual basis, and that's, I have no idea what that is. And so that's probably the piece that we'd want someone to tell us. If we built a ramp, what would people pay? And then the third is, what are the annual expenses? And I think from, again, all the parking ramps and things we have, we could fairly easily get a good cost in those expenses. And so we know what the cost is, here's the income we expect, here's our expenses, then we'll know, are we short, are we good? And if we're short, which I anticipate we would be, we go to the city and say, here's what we need to make this work, and the city says no, then we put it on hold until we find interest rates come down or something else happens. If all the stars align and it works good, then I think you gotta dig into the design, the timing, you know, all those other issues, which are critical issues, but, you know, it's,
Yeah, I do think, you know, we are under a time constraint, and I'm not sure how quickly any of those could react to that. I agree that it's absolutely necessary.
do we have anything, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, do we have anything that shows the revenue that people anticipate we'd receive off of rent?
There is an older study that was done.
Well, Mr. Chair, we actually have, they gave us the spreadsheet modeling so we could update the numbers. The cities had that, and we've had that for a year and a half, 2 years. So it's really just updating or bringing the numbers current.
The only thing is, you have to decide if you want to increase it by approximately 245 spaces from the 3-story to a 4-story. That makes a huge difference.
The 3 and 4 story would make a difference.
Yep.
Make a difference, but it does bring us to, you know, one of the areas that, you know, I've felt concerned about deficiency at the board level is we do not have strong financial management, either a position here at the airport or a contracted position that could work with these type of things. So we do find ourselves going to consultants on those. Sean, I would ask you of kind of the 3 options, or who do you think could respond efficiently, probably not the fastest, but most efficient review in that?
Well, I think SP Plus and Walker prepared the last one, so they already have a track record. Leibowitz and Horton's gonna be involved regardless or not, just because if they wanna know all cash flows for the airport. So if you had a garage, they're automatically gonna be involved. So it's probably a combination of who we already have on board. Greg Pearson, I don't know if Greg is on today, but Greg from SP Plus already has their team working on a pro forma, but it may only be based on the 3-story structure versus a 4. They say they've used Scott in the past, they engaged Baker Tilly last time on interest rates, which is a financial consultant in the city.
Mr. Chairman, and I think all we need to know is what revenue they forecast.
Yeah.
We know the costs are gonna change, we know the interest rates are gonna change, so I'm saying, I think to be very crystal clear with one of these companies, we don't need them to build it, cost estimate, and we don't need them to do anything other than what kind of rent would we charge and how full, what kind of revenue would we get off it. So I think we could narrow it down very specifically.
And I think they're gonna want your input on assumptions. You know,
What's that?
Any consultant can make assumptions and make it look real rosy and you move forward with. And another one may be more conservative in their assumptions. So what is the rate per day? They're gonna wanna know from you what that rate per day should be. We're at $19 a day now, we can probably easily justify 25, 26, maybe more. Actually, our short-term rate should probably increase today just because of the usage, but they're gonna need to know what assumptions that you want. We already know what our forecasted employments are gonna be. That was part of the terminal area study that was completed. It's a little over 2% per year in employment, so they have that data.
My only question, if we've gotta tell them what the rent's gonna be, we got the wrong person. I mean,
Well,
No,
but
I
there's some
disagree with
assumptions.
that.
I mean, they can set the rent, but, you know, it might be at 25 a day, and then some people might go, geez, well, no, it should only be 20. They have the same discussions in Sioux Falls, so I'm telling you, just to prepare you, they're gonna want some input.
yeah, I don't disagree with
Yeah.
input, but I mean, if we're hiring someone to tell us what the income is gonna be on it, I expect they have some experience
They
with
will,
parking
right.
ramps and
Yeah, well, yeah,
Similar.
They've done this for
But
decades.
Mr. Chair,
income rate.
oh, that's what as this board sets the rental rates, we may tell them upfront, because it's gonna come back to us anyway, so we may as well upfront tell them what we believe the rental rate should be.
Just a range.
Yeah, it's gonna come back
But
to us.
this board sets the rates, not the consultant.
They have to give us, you know, their estimate of what.
They can do that
Yeah,
too.
and again, I come from the background of course, renting things, right? The landlord does set the rates, but if you set them too high, no one comes. If you set them too low, you leave money on the table. So it's really, our consumers are gonna determine what our rate can be. The people that are coming, are they gonna use it or not use it? So that's where, again, I don't mean to But that is the one, to me, that's the most important issue, that we can't just throw a number there and say, here's the rate and it's gonna be rented half the time.
No,
We need a professional to tell us,
Yeah, and they'll do that.
and I think the more input we can give them, great. But we wanna be able to know fairly conservatively, here's our revenue off a parking garage.
No, the other component that they'll tell you, and Walker already had mentioned that in here, it's gonna be a net revenue amount, because you're covering up 200, almost 300 spots now that are generating about 1.2 million per year. So.
Yeah, we can figure all that stuff out. To me, that's
Right.
simple.
And kind of the back way into this is to see what's a reasonable revenue figure.
Exactly.
That comes out of this. And where you say we're giving up 1.2 million, those 200 spots are now undercover, and so instead of generating 1.2, they may generate 2 million, so you have a gain, 800 plus a gain in the rest. But you do cannibalize, and I think what we would like to ask here is who could very quickly put together for us the revenue estimate that we're going to see from this. And with that, it's going to kind of dictate, it's not a 20-story parking garage, but it's
What can we
probably
afford?
more than a 2-story. And so the revenue will lead us to that. But keep in mind, we do need to, and Commissioner Shand, I'd ask you to give us the drop dead date. I thought it was towards the end of May.
I believe it is, from our perspective, to get it going forward, yeah.
And so we may have to kind of take an intermediate step. We're studying this at this point. But go to the city and say, will you consider putting this in your not to exceed mill levy as we develop further plans. But at the end of the day, we're going to be taking steps on this and spending some funds that at any point, some of our assumptions, our financing cannot be brought in at the rates that we think. We're a long ways from an absolute go, no-go decision.
Well, and one thing that the Walker study showed us is that we are going to have a shortfall of parking in the future. So I think it was it in 10 years, we're gonna be short 599, my numbers are.
It's the same study
a
that
little-
Nate Hunt has done
Yeah.
every year for us, so, yeah, there's a projection, what they call it, trigger date study.
So I think we were super fortunate to get the additional short-term, or, not short-term, the additional lot, open before Thanksgiving, and we were at capacity for
As far
on
as,
multiple occasions. So I think as we expand our airport, we need to think also about the infrastructure aspect of it.
as far as input is concerned, we got airports, Winnipeg, Minneapolis, Sioux Falls, that already have ramps. I'm thinking Sioux Falls, or are they just
Sioux Falls
building one?
is breaking ground, they're doing it now.
For an idea, just an idea of what they're charging. So, and it seems to me like Minneapolis, every time you turn around, they're building another ramp, so.
Everything's.
Mr. Chair, oh, yeah, go ahead.
To me, I think there's two things if you wanna move quickly on something, is one is we need someone to help with a revenue forecast. I think that's more of a regional or national firm with our input that can say, here's the revenue you can expect per stall.
Yep.
Then I think the other thing that we need is we need a local, it doesn't have to be local, but I think we need an accounting person or firm that can put a pro forma together for us. But doesn't appear that we've got anyone that really can do that. So those are the two things, and I don't know what the process would be if we have the authority just to go out and hire an accounting firm to do we need to do 30 hours and plug these numbers in and put them together. Or do we have to go out for bids, or how do we do that piece?
We do have the ability under our purchasing policy, but if we're talking, under $25,000, we can go out and select, maybe get just a couple quotes.
I think this would be less than 5,000.
Yeah.
And I think we could probably use our accounting firm too, that does our bookkeeping.
Yeah, I'm not
They
sure.
won't do that. No. So Ike Bailey did the Sioux Falls one.
What's that?
Ike Bailey did the one for Sioux Falls, but
Uh,
yeah,
I would say we could tap Ike Bailey pretty quickly to come in and pull this together.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
since we have in the city of Fargo has the prior pro forma spreadsheets that were used to come up with all the prior numbers, and we knew there was a shortfall. The pieces that we're concerned about are A, the timeline for the city of Fargo to request a mill, specifically dedicated to a parking facility. It isn't just based on what we know today, it's everything in the past. We know we've had a shortfall in every prior iteration of those presentations, we know that. So Commissioner Strand, is it out of line to ask the city for a mill specifically dedicated to parking facilities, and that's the starting point?
My sense of the folks I'm talking with is that it's very appropriate. It's expected. My sense is there will be a discussion about sunset of any millage, and there will be a discussion of cost sharing or revenue sharing or payback, if at all, of any sort. But I would say we need to get that door open pretty quickly.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, when you talk about cost sharing or payback, if that bucket that is, if the ramp is profitable and obviously we are growing, payback really is a full circle, because why would we pay something back and ask for money again that can be used for a second facility? I don't understand that. That is gonna have to be explained.
Well, we'll just have to work through that to get agreement. But if whether it's a loan or whether it's an investment from the city's perspective, whether it's a partnering of costs.
Well, we would just be asking for one more mill,
Yeah.
which we are statutorily able to take 4 mills, correct, or ask for 4? And so we're using 2, so we would just ask for one more mill allocated
Or
for
parking ramp.
only a parking ramp.
What does one mill generate?
802,000.
Combine that with a TIF, you'd wanna do a TIF for Lowell Airport too, right?
That I haven't heard a discussion on.
No.
We'll just special assess it.
And Mr. Ingram, I appreciate, we're in an awkward situation because we're sort of trying to negotiate what we don't know yet. How the city
Mr. Chair,
might approach.
I've been on this body for 4 years, we've went through this process every year multiple times, and we know there's been a shortfall in any iteration of the request. So knowing that and starting the correspondence with the city and said, we're gonna need a mill, there needs to be a sunset specifically for a parking facility, is not out of line.
No, but I think what we have to leave open is, yes, there is the requirement that the county has, that you have to submit your not to exceed mill, which is, we have to deal with that. As we go to the city, I would like to give the city and Commissioner Strand the option of saying, how would they like to proceed with that? Is it a dedicated mill? Yeah, I don't know. Is it identified revenues from other sources in the city? I just say, we leave that open to the city and negotiation.
Well, not if we request a mill specifically for a parking facility. If we request a mill for a parking facility.
Well, I would rather go to the city and ask their participation in this, and not, it seems to be a little presumptuous to come to somebody and say, we want you to participate in it, and by the way, we want you to do it this way. If Commissioner Strand is sitting on $20 million,
Maybe we start out by asking for 2 mills rather than 1.
I thought.
Well, that's what I have written right there, 2 mills.
Yeah.
Well, again, it goes back to what are we looking at, shortfall, and that all spins around this whole discussion that we're gonna have in real time. Is there a shortfall, and what design is it, and what programmatic dollars become available? We just saw some very great maneuvering by this board and thank you for leading it with Bank of North Dakota programs. We know there's new programs coming up there. Who knows eligibility on those things, so. You know, I think we need to move quickly. I think we need to take some amount of risk and commit some dollars to this process so we're in the best position possible.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Sean, what are the pre-construction estimates and maybe Jeff, what are the pre-construction estimates for a $40 million ramp? What's the upfront cost ballpark?
Well, your architectural would be 11% roughly, so say a little over 4 million is what you would be committed to
Regardless.
to get you to the point to where you open bids.
Yeah. So we would be $4+ million into the process to open bids.
Well, before point plus million into it, what we need to be doing is putting the pieces in place. What the logical way to approach it would be to prepare, an RFP that we're gonna go out and we're gonna look for architectural services, but not engage them. And we have to kind of build this step by step as we go. So, yes, there will be at a certain point a big decision to make, just like was done with the terminal, that architectural services were put in place. The process was, and we just saw that through no fault of anybody, that a change in programs could have put our whole financing program in jeopardy. So there is risk in all these, but we try to take them as far as we can and minimize them.
Well, Mr. Chairman, one of my thoughts is, sounds like timing. I think in 2 weeks we can put a pro forma together that we can put before this board. And then with that can go on to the city from that. So it hits the May timing. Does that make sense?
I would be comfortable with it if a pro forma could be put together with current costs.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna have anything hard. We won't. But I think we could put something together that would show a need for city funding and start that ball rolling.
Well,
Then that would work for your timing, right? John, you were thinking to get something, or does that not coincide with city commission meetings?
Well, we have a meeting the 16th, and we have a meeting the 30th. The 30th might be cutting it tight depending on that deadline. We could maybe look for getting an intent on the 16th, which we have to advance Thursday prior to that. To get it on the agenda, to get the topic advanced, which to me would seem prudent.
Yeah.
So our next meeting would be the 23rd.
Your next meeting, yeah, which is,
We may need to have a special meeting here.
So tell me your timing again. What would be ideal for you?
16th would probably give us
A week
breathing
from
room.
today.
Yeah. To get the concept put to this, we haven't discussed this formally at all.
Well, we haven't either.
No, well, you are now, and, but it'd be good to gauge their appetite. I don't want to assume anything, but I sense it's there. These nuances of whether it's a 4-story or a 3-story, whether it's a loan or whether it's a partnership, those, whether it's sunsetted or not, those little topics will influence the group.
You said May 16th, that's a Tuesday, do you mean May 15th?
I'm sorry, May
15th, and then May 30th is a Tuesday because Memorial Day.
It's May 15th, I'm sorry.
So May 15th and then May 30th, which is a Tuesday.
Yeah, that's a Tuesday after Memorial Day. Should I go quick call and find out if I can get a firm deadline?
Sure.
If I'll do that, that's if I get back.
And like
I'm
Rick
sorry,
said,
Mr. Chairman.
that,
No.
like Rick said, that we've had all these studies, we know there's a shortfall. So if we brought it up to date with today's dollars, we should have it ready for their next meeting, I would think, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field.
If you want to engage someone at iBailey, I can call Chad Flanagan over there and see what resources he has available, not to exceed 5,000, and have them partner with Walker and SP Plus. A lot of that data is already done.
Mr. Chair, SP Plus gave us the spreadsheets, right? They handed over those, yeah.
That's all.
My only concern is I think we wanna give a recommendation to the city. And I don't know if we have all the correct information before us. That's what I'm saying, so
Well,
you know,
I,
so there's a balance here, so
no, I was surprised on the city's sort of deadline. It got away from me, that I forgot about the not to exceed number that has to be reported. And it's not in any way an approval of the mill levy. It's just saying, we're gonna submit a budget and the mill levy requested will not exceed 150 million, or I don't know what the number is. So it's not a commitment for financing form, but it's a precondition. If they're going to dedicate a mill, they have, they have to have been included. So,
What's our mill levy right now? 2 mills?
2 mills.
And we can legally go to 4?
4. So,
There isn't any harm in going right to the 2.
That's,
well,
I mean, asking for it to reserve it.
and this is just, negotiations and strategy.
Yeah.
But what, I've talked to commissioners, and this is my opinion, there doesn't seem to be much appetite for putting 2 mills into this. We need 3 votes at the commission level to approve it. There's always strategy, do we go in for 2 and hope we can have a compromise to 1, or do they say no to 2 and then?
Well, Mr. Chair, the fact that the mills are dedicated to parking structure and facility or parking ramp in itself, the money only goes to one place. It doesn't go anyplace else. That is very clean. I think that very clean for the county and the city, and the taxpayers of Fargo as well.
Well, and again, it's all gonna lead back to the financing. Is the mill levy then dedicated to a bond issue, or is it just money that transfers to the airport as the other 2 mills of revenue coming to the airport? And then if it were 3 or 4 mills, just in a traditional manner, it just transfers to the airport.
If it's approved for us for that, the airport just like it does now.
we've just been shooting the breeze waiting for you.
So
You have anything?
The mayor's recommendation would be, we put it on our 30th of May agenda, which would give us room, you a little more breathing room, us a little more room, and we might have another internal roundtable discussion in advance of both of these.
Perfect.
But that way, if you're gonna go with a pro forma, that's his interest is in that too, whatever that would show.
Yeah.
And this will fit our timeline.
We're on the 30th because the chair always presents.
Thank you for taking care of that so quickly.
You're welcome.
All right, so we've got about a 22-page motion at this point. I'm going to include everything.
Mr. Chair, I would like to amend the motion.
Wait a second, you can withdraw your first motion.
Now let's just start over.
I withdraw the first, Mr. Chair, I'd like to withdraw the
Withdraw the
first
It was a great motion, but it's dead now.
motion. Less, okay. Mr. Chair, I would move that we work to create a pro forma for the city in request of use of our mill levy privileges to be directed specifically for a parking ramp. And leave it at that.
And maybe almost a friendlier amendment, I think what we need is a pro forma on a parking ramp here for the airport.
And
then second, we take that to the
And
city.
we've been through so many, I've been here 4 years, we've been through so many of those. It would be to your benefit,
All
we've
right, I'll
gotta get you,
second-
we've
I'll
gotta
second
get you
it.
those,
I'll second it.
obviously, so.
So we can probably update what we've already got.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be willing, I don't need to be in the motion, but I'd be willing to volunteer and help kind of work through that. If Ida is willing to do that, and we can come up with some numbers.
All right, and this would be to direct Sean to immediately try and find a group to
Or go back to the original spreadsheets we got and just get them updated with
Yeah.
input from,
I think the two main things, just to be clear, are one, revenue and income, and then two, having Ide or someone put this package together.
Sean, are you clear on this?
Not really, but, so what I'll do is I'll get Ide Bailey to partner with Walker and SP Plus.
And Mr. Berg has offered to participate in that process
Absolutely.
with you, Sean, say, maybe the three of you, the two of you can meet with I pull this together. Okay.
What's the deadline that you want to perform? Give us a date,
Tomorrow afternoon.
okay?
Tomorrow afternoon at 11:30.
Mr. Chair, Sean, based on what SP Plus did before and the information they've gathered, the space count and construction costs and rate of parking are the three primary. The fourth was cost of money. From the prior conversations we've had, those are the four things. I believe that iteration of the spreadsheets allowed us to make those assumptions separately when they handed them off to us.
So they've done 1,000 gross and a 500 gross.
Yep.
So we use the word
Well,
gross.
and there certainly can do a sensitivity analysis, in the sense that here's $25 a day rate, here's $30 a day. And again, just run the 500 and 1,000, or the 700 and 1,000. So I think we can get to.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Sean, were those prior net 500, net 1,000? Or were they gross? They were gross, okay.
I just think we have to remember that the 200 we're losing will be upgraded revenue spots in that they're in the ramp going forward.
But we'll still lose $1.3 million for the time of construction, for the most part.
Well, and construction is going to be a beast.
Which, Mr. Chair, having said that, the fact that we have a project, pending project, and a construction manager at risk, that construction manager at risk might see some savings as they've already staged here to move to the next project as well. So there might be some consideration. Rich, is that right?
It's easy.
How much of a discount for a second project?
It's free, second one's free, buy one, get one.
I'd say two things. One, it's probably very comparable to what we're doing at Fargo Sports, which was a 90 million first phase, and then they added 40 million. And it made total sense. I mean, I'd say this even if the other firm was in our shoes right now, to have done it, staging was there, mobilization was there. Two big construction firms on the same site is difficult. But the other thing I've asked or offer is, if you want us in the next week or two when you're doing this, to validate numbers, we do a lot of parking ramps. We'll get you an up-to-date number in the next couple of weeks if you want it, Sean.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to muddy the waters because there's a motion and a second already, but would the ramp include the walkway from the terminal to the ramp? And another question to Sean is, if there's a walkway connected from the center of the terminal building, can that be funded
Yeah.
federally?
The FAA already determined that to be eligible, but it's very low priority.
Okay.
So if we have ramps or things on the airfield that need to be funded that are on our capital improvement project, there's no way they're gonna let you spend a penny on a walkway unless there's some other.
So it's eligible but highly unlikely.
And a ramp is not eligible for any federal funds.
Yeah.
That's correct.
But I think that's something that should be considered, so we don't have a 4-story ramp, new terminal building, and you're still walking
42 feet?
42 feet, yeah.
Well, I think that's where we start, kind of spinning around with the design services. I think the anticipation would be to look at this, of course, with a ramp, with a walkway across. And again, there'll be decisions made all along is that instead of 1,000, it's better to do 700. I would think not having a walkway might be a pretty big give, but if it comes down to, you can have a ramp but not a walkway, those are all decisions that will be space, but going forward.
Would it be less expensive to do a tunnel than I mean, Kansas City Airport had a ramp in the terminal and it was a tunnel from
Not in our soil conditions here.
we've got it at
Isn't it-
Sanford. They go
Huh?
from the parking garage to the interior of the hospital with a tunnel.
We have a lot of, utilities in front of the terminal that would, not be good, and, Mr. Captan is correct, our soils, make it a lot more difficult to do that.
Okay, just wondering if there was a less expensive option.
Cause our soil here is nothing but grease, blue clay.
Durable too.
Oh, well, we found it out
Get on
when
a
we
little
built
boat
the
and go
tower.
through.
So, Mr. Chairman, if your meeting is the 23rd, and our meeting, we will be discussing this, would be the 30th, and our deadlines for agendas would be the 25th, perhaps we shoot to have a discussion with our roundtable group, the Wednesday, the 24th.
24th.
If we can schedule it, that way we have a little breathing room after your meeting or the afternoon of your Tuesday meeting.
We've still had our functioning group, between the city and the airport authority working. So, that would give the city some time to. This is a big ask, I mean, for them to increase the mill levies, it's a huge thing, and it's political, and, they need the information to do that. Until that happens, we don't know. Like I said, even with the approval to put it in the not to exceed number, it won't be final till the budget's approved in August, September, or somewhere in there.
And then it's certified, I think, the beginning of October, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I hate to ask this, but is everybody clear on the motion? We do have.
You can clarify it.
Well, I will let Rick summarize their process. I guess I'd ask you to repeat your motion.
To move forward with the request and pro forma to submit to the city and use our mill levy privileges to direct those dollars to a parking facility.
Yeah, and the only thing
That's fine.
that I would suggest that mill levy or other city resources.
No, this is a mill levy. Let's keep it simple with a mill levy first.
Well, I just don't wanna, I guess it doesn't matter if they said no to mill levy, but we're gonna take revenues from whatever, enterprise fund or something. I don't wanna, the parking authority, Rick, it needs to be on the parking authority.
And the simpler it is, the better, so it's a mill levy directed to a parking facility.
That would be the request.
Yep.
Supported with the pro forma. Okay. Everybody clear? Joan? Got that? And this directs also directs Sean to engage very quickly the development of that pro forma, using all the resources necessary. All right. Call the roll, please.
Ian.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that was pretty simple. We've inserted into the agenda 10A, the request proposals for marketing. At the last meeting, I was not attended. I apologize for that. Motion to prepare an RFP for marketing services failed for lack of majority to vote. I don't think it's appropriate to leave it there at that point, and so I would encourage any discussion or motion on that process. I'll vote with the full board.
Just for discussion, because none of us are marketing experts, I'm just a consumer. what about having a marketing consultant? Give us their 2 cents as to,
Well, I've thought a little bit about this since last week, and I think the question for us is, what are we trying to accomplish with this expense? So what are we trying to accomplish? And I think we need to, I actually think that it would be a good idea to have someone that's out of the market that does marketing for airports that would say, here's some metrics, here's what you measure, here's how you do it. The other alternative would be to do an RFP, but I think if we do the RFP, we need to tell them, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Do we want more passengers, improve the awareness, more market share? And then we tell them to submit back on the RFP how they would measure it. And so kind of put it back on them to say, here's what we want to accomplish. You give us a proposal and tell us how to measure it. So, I mean,
Yeah, it's sort of suggesting that we would go and look for a marketing consultant to say, these are the things that we should be considering and looking at as we go forward. Because, we are seeing a dramatic shift in marketing dollars and spend. Still some of the traditional media, but some of the new media and the social media. So, that would lead to an RFP or?
so we talk about the parking garage and how, is it gonna cash out, is it gonna pay for itself? And are we and so I just asked my thought is $265,000 is a lot of money, and are we just raising awareness and letting people know that we have a airport in Fargo? Or are we letting people know we have exciting new destinations, we've got, 4 flights a day or 3 flights a day to Arizona, what is the goal of the marketing campaign? Are we reaching the people that we need to be reaching? Have we thought about other means of marketing as print advertising, and so many services like radio and TV go to streaming? How are we making the most of those marketing dollars, just to be, as our responsibility as board members to use our money wisely?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We annually do a review with our current provider, and they give us an update and a direction for what they're planning for a 1 to 3 year period currently, correct?
They do that, and they just gave one at our last meeting to answer all of the questions that you just did. There's a big difference between marketing and advertising. They're 2 different things. We do both. They also do public relations, they do crisis management. So the $265 you mentioned is never spent. It's there just in case there's an accident that they have to respond to. They don't spend all of that budget. So I thought the recap at the last meeting was, basically answered everything that you did in terms of what they do for us. We're trying to do everything. It's an awareness of what the airport has to offer. It's a last minute thing if there's some climate weather, it's flights cancellations, parking issues, other amenities. So that it's used for all different things, and social media has expedited the ability to be able to do that.
When's the last time we've taken bids for these services?
It's been an annual engagement.
Okay, but is it, when we say an annual engagement, is it just a presentation by one company, or are we opening up and saying, everybody come in, let's take a look at what you're
The board has chosen to keep Flint on. I sense obviously that you want to change that and dip your feet out into the water. Locally, there's only really one firm that does that, that's Flint. There is Odney and Bismarck, but they're not really doing those things.
But what we're discussing here, as I read the minutes, was an RFP for those services. When's the last time we've done an RFP? 1998. So, to me, as I read that, it's like, whatever the amount is, 268,000 is a significant amount. It's not saying we want to make a change, it's just saying, let's see what an RFP will bring forth.
And that's fine, just vote to do it, and I'll put it in the form, and it'll be done.
I think we're missing part of the point here. I mean, I don't know if 300 is too high or too low. maybe we should spend $1 million and that gives us 10,000 more people boarding.
Right.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I
Nobody
think,
knows that.
what's
No-
that?
Nobody knows that.
Well, but that's what we should, well, that's what we should know. We should know if, yeah, I mean, again, so I thought you made a really good suggestion. Maybe we find someone outside of our market that does marketing for airports, and they can help us with a strategy and metrics that we can measure. And I think that our current marketing people might like that as well, because that enables them to be more focused on what it is we want them to do. So,
This is my wheelhouse to a degree. And one of the thoughts I've put in your thinking caps is, as you're exploring your future, would be to have your own internal marketing team and your own staff, your own people as part of your culture. And I'm not sure how that would look, but I would absolutely, if you're gonna look at alternative ways of doing it, look at having your own people too.
That's a good point.
Mr. Chair, that would be okay. My only concern is the crisis management part. One event where the internal people are on vacation sleeping and one event here or crisis here that is not dealt with immediately, promptly, and professionally, is you can't unwind yourself from that, and that would be a concern, the internal part of the marketing. Not that it wouldn't maybe be beneficial, but that's my only concern. And we hope we never have a crisis or an event that happens as well.
Well, I think that's a hurdle that the city has to deal with too. You're live 24/7 and have to have coverage. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is. But that, yes, it probably is an appropriate discussion. It is a position, the better way to approach it. So what we'd be looking here is not a request for proposal at marketing and advertising services. It would be to find a consultant to kind of discuss with us, what they're seeing within this industry and how it's being handled.
yeah, if I were gonna make a motion, it might be to identify at least 2 airport marketing people that are outside of our market, so that are outside of our market to help with our strategy and the measuring or metrics of our advertising.
Is that a motion?
I was gonna ask.
You wanna make that motion?
I would make that motion or
I'll
I'll second
second.
yours.
Okay. Motion made by Ekman, second by Berg, discussion.
Question, when you say outside market, describe that.
So I think we don't want Odney to come in and tell us what Flint is doing right or wrong. I don't think, so what I think is you need to find someone that we would never hire full-time to do our advertising or marketing. Someone that maybe specializes in another similar sized market.
Almost eliminate themselves if there were RFP that came out of this, that they would not be participating in that RFP.
Correct.
If they exist, so I contact 2 marketing firms that represent a large airport someplace. Which one do you want? Do you want both or how?
I don't
Are you looking to pay
understand what
him
you're
money?
saying.
Are you looking to pay this consultant to come in?
What's that?
Are you looking to pay this consultant?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, from my perspective, the high level, what do we want? We want to increase our market share. If more people are using Fargo versus other airports, I have no way of knowing if we're doing that. I think businesses that are using, we want them to use it more. I mean, fundamental things we want to know, are we driving more people to use the airport? So I certainly don't have the answers, but it would seem that that would be who we would look for.
Does Neil Hunt do anything like that?
We do air service consulting.
Air service consultant?
Correct.
Okay, just curious. I mean, it seems like you do so much with airports in general, just wondering if you have an airport advertising or marketing division.
No, I don't think it's what you would be looking for.
Okay.
directed towards assessing your service.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second to identify and engage a marketing consultant to help us with the strategy and tactics as we look to expand the reach of our programs.
So if I solicit 2 firms and get a price for them to come in and consult.
Yep.
Then bring it back to the next meeting to recommend one of the firms or what?
Sure.
If they exist, I say.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
when you say outside of the area, how far outside of the area?
Well, again, just from a common sense, far enough that it wouldn't be higher, but close enough that they would know, I mean, we want someone that's marketing a feeder airport like Fargo into another hub, like we're doing with Minneapolis and Denver.
All right, we have a.
So is Sioux Falls too close?
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that. I think Sioux Falls, Des Moines, some of those markets, if they're using.
I would think if you indicate to them that if you're providing these services, you would not be considered in an RFP to employ these services, and they'll self-select. Because then they're gonna say, well, I can get the consulting work, I never would be. All right, we have a motion and a second, call roll please.
Hingham.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye. All right. Very quickly, I'm sorry here, you guys were very efficient when I was gone, you could see the problem. Item number 11 is communication with FAA regarding implementation of safety management systems. 14 CFR 139.
So this is the final adoption and notice by our cert inspector of the requirement for airports to implement safety management systems for airports. This has been under discussion during 11 years, 10, 11 years for some time. We will likely engage a consultant to assist with the preparation of that. Well, that's what all the airports have done so far that we've chatted with to put together a system, and the board will be part of that process as we move forward to meeting the deadlines for the implementation of the SMS. This will be a topic of discussion at the Denver Annual Conference of AAAE, and been in contact with one consultant that has done quite a few airports, or started with some airports of our size to prepare. The basic document is going to be very similar between airports because we all face the same risks and threats of maneuvering in and out of areas where aircraft are operating and other equipment associated with airports and operations. See where that goes, but this is just kind of giving us moving forward with that. Obviously Jordan, Darren, herself, Dan, and Andrew would be a big part of that, along with the fire department to put this together. So it's more of a notice.
Good. Just information on the item number 12 is the FAA grant assurance policy. As we review policies, one policy immediately going forward. This one is stunningly beautiful. Are we comfortable that we continually kind of take a look at the FAA grant assurance policies?
So it's looked at, so Stacy and I, when we sign the federal grants, and accept those on behalf of the board, that's a requirement. There's 39 of those grant assurances that we're held to. It's just, let's see here, it's kind of rates what we do, it's different than what other county or city does, it's different.
Well, I think the reason for doing this is just that if there is ever a situation where we're in violation, we have annually we've reviewed and updated these and kept track of all of them. The beauty is each grant has them included with it.
And it's probably one of the most serious parts of what I do in conjunction with Sean. I go to a 3-day airport law conference annually where the 150 other airport lawyers, we're having our re-education on what's what.
So there's nothing that we change on this, this comes from the feds and it's here.
No, it's just that we're aware of it, we're applying it. It's part of our audit process and everything else.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is the grant assurance policy and the process now unique and separate from the cities, correct?
This has nothing to do with the city.
Yeah,
It is not,
In
okay,
each
it's
grant,
promulgated by the FAA.
by the FAA,
each
okay.
grant becomes one unto itself
Correct.
under these policies.
But prior to being a standalone from the city, it was still set up this way, correct?
Yeah, this hasn't changed
Okay.
at all.
All right,
This is
thank you.
independent of anything with the city.
The grant recipient has to assure compliance with everything.
And when we sign off on the grants, we have to check the box that says that we do and we have.
Okay. And this is unique to our tax ID number and the description of the MAA?
Yeah, the recipient of the grant.
We're the sponsor.
Yep.
Grant by grant.
All right.
All right, airport construction and security update.
Well, Terry, sorry to keep you waiting.
Yeah, no problem. Good morning. So on Exit Plaza, we're having some issue with our roofer getting metal for the roof cap. Other than that, the building is complete. The rest of it is, there's some, I think some landscaping and things that I believe the staff at the airport is talking with Powers about maybe doing a little differently than what we had on the plan, so they're working on that. The ground's awfully wet, and of course with rain, and now it's raining again this week, it's gonna take a little while before they can go in there and do things because everything's just so wet. We got some bollards to put concrete in and paint and then right now we're just nailing down, when Northern starts, the process of repaving and creating more parking spots in the old, Exit Plaza area. We'll be removing the old building. Right now they're getting an asbestos survey done, for any demolition that we do today have to have an asbestos assessment, and so I'll get that done before, so they'll be clear to tear it down. So it's really mostly site work, and hoping to nail down this metal cap on the exterior of the building here soon.
All right, so I'll make this quick. So Friday of next week on the 19th, we'll open bids for the reconstruction of the north and east perimeter roads and the Cargo Jet Center apron expansion. I guess, Rick, for your benefit, I can email you just like a scope of the work of exactly what's going on, updated costs and things. All the other authority members and been kept apprised of this as we've been going through it. Right now, I'll be heading down there after the meeting. We're having a meeting with Porter States to go over the punch list items for the east parking lot that was built last summer. There's just some seating, some attention that needs to be done to repaint some of the bollards and get that stuff figured out so we can issue the final payment for that. And then the last thing I'll mention is next week, I haven't nailed down an exact time yet, but we'll have the pre-construction meeting with Northern Improvement to pave the old west entrance. So like Terry mentioned, all those buildings will come out, it'll be paved, they'll add about 160 stalls.
Security system?
Security system is going, we finally got the network switches. They're being programmed right now, Darren, if I remember correctly from yesterday, so yeah, there was a issue, if you recall, we were unable to get the network switches that were specified. Everything was supply chain these days. They gave us an estimated delivery date of late 2023 to into 2025. So we had to find a different solution, but we were able to get those different switches. So, any questions?
All right, thank you.
Jeff.
Yep.
Any other business?
Additional, so April, 39,680 employments, that's it for April. Record April.
Awesome.
So we're heading in the right direction there. Just an announcement, Gordy Person passed away last Friday. His funeral was yesterday. Gordy ran the aviation school here for many, many years, Dakota Aerotech. He's in the North Dakota Aviation Hall of Fame, so our sympathies to his family, condolences there. We're looking for another heavy equipment mechanic. Our mechanic is here for a short period of time as part of other opportunities. Flint is working on looking at options to sign people up online with our newsletter, our quarterly newsletter, so looking for some options there. And then also, Mead and Hunt put together, along with Flint, some project display boards that are supposed to be displayed out there on the second floor, so people could see what we've been seeing here for a number of weeks on the terminal. So Jeff, do you have those, or Brandon, do you know where they're at?
They're at the printer right now, we'll bring those up.
All right, so those will be on display on easels just outside the door here, so people can stay tuned with what we're doing here, so.
Can't remember
That's,
anything.
all I have for now.
All right. Meeting adjourned.